So let's go ahead and set up our new C# script. I'll come down here in my new folder, Control-click, hover on Create, then go up to C# script. I'm going to call this Zombie Demo because this is my demonstration script. You can just call your zombie or zombie AI or whatever you want, but remember, if it's 2 words, don't put a space in between them or it will break everything. So I'm calling mine Zombie Demo, and then I'm going to double click on it to open it up in MonoDevelop. And here is our new script. Now, this isn't super complex, but there are kind of a lot of steps, so bear with me, try to pay close attention, and don't worry, we're going to get through it. Now, before we set up any variables or do anything else, we're actually going to go up to the very top, and right after where it says Using Unity Engine, I'm going to hit Enter and give myself another space to work, and I'm going to type, well, almost the exact same thing, Using Unity Engine, and then I'm going to put .ai and a semicolon. We need this because we're working with the NavMesh agent, which is a part of Unity's AI functionality. So if we want to talk to the NavMesh agent and work on this zombie AI, we need to be actually using the Unity Engine AI framework in this script. Next, I'm going to leave start and update here for now, and I'm going to come down here to what is my line 7, right underneath the public class of Zombie Demo or whatever you named yours. I'm going to make a few rows because we're going to put a few things in here. So I'll just give myself some space to work with. Hopefully make it easier for you to see what's going on too. So first I'm going to start off with a reference to the player's location. Now, keep in mind, if we jump back to Unity here real quick, everything in the inspector has a transform. This is the position, rotation, and scale of every game object in the scene. Our FPS controller, our zombie, our cameras, everything has a transform. I bring that up now because in MonoDevelop, we are going to be referencing the transform of the player. Oh, and I did a really common typo there. I'm not the only one who does this. I accidentally let my fingers get away from me and I started to type transform player. So watch out for little typos like that, but I just want to type in transform player, and this is going to help the zombie find where the player is, because eventually we want the zombie to follow the player. Now I'll go down here and I'll type Unity Engine .ai .navmesh agent. Take a close look at what's being capitalized here. Also keep in mind, MonoDevelop will try to help you out with some autocomplete options, so you can always just hit Tab if it's getting to the right one, or click on the one that looks right. Then I need a quick space and nav, and that in a semicolon. This is a reference to the NavMesh agent that we put on our zombie. Now we're going to do one more thing with the NavMesh agent real quick, which is simply to put in a public NavMesh agent. I'll just click on that there. And then I need to finish this off with space agent and a semicolon. And this again will be communicating with the NavMesh agent that's on our zombie, but this one we're going to actually drag it in and hook it up. We'll do that a little bit later, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, 2 more things I want to put in here before we get down to our functions, our voids. I want to set this up so that when I'm far away from the zombie, it won't even notice me. When I'm pretty close, they'll notice me and move towards me. And when they get really close to me, they'll stop to attack. So I'm going to put a couple of range variables in here. So I'm going to use 2 public floats. Let's start with our first one, public float of move, lowercase m there, and capital R range. So move range, whenever the player is within this move range, the zombie will move towards it. Now we'll do basically the same thing, public float, but this one I'm going to call attack range, and end that in a semicolon as well. When they get within the attack range, then they'll stand still and eventually play an attack animation. Remember, no animations today, just pure movement. Animations will come next time. Now, I actually don't need a void start. I'm going to be using something very similar to void start, but it's called a void awake. And I'm going to leave everything here except the word start. I'll just change that to awake instead of setting everything up again. Just making that little change is a little bit easier. I'm Go ahead and hit enter a couple times, give myself a little more space to work. I just want to put a couple lines in here to make sure that when the game starts, it actually starts talking to some of these things that we set up here. So I will type in player equals game object find, and here we already have it helping us out a little bit. Find game object with tag. Now we need to tell it what tag to look for. We want it to look for the player, and by default, your player should already have the tag of player. So we'll say that it should look for something with the tag of player, and that it should look at the transform, which includes the location of that player. Next, we want to make sure that nav is equal to get component, and then inside of our angled brackets, Unity engine .ai.nav mesh agent. This is really just telling our code to start talking to that nav mesh agent so that they can work together. I hesitated for a minute here because I noticed that this is showing up in red, and it should be pretty easy to see why I missed an S. I spelled transform instead of transform. So we'll put that in, and that should fix that. And then here where I see nav mesh agent, I realized I typed 2 A's, so I'm typing a little too fast, and I'm making a few mistakes. Now these are still hanging out looking kind of red, so let's do a real quick run and start debugging. And let's see if it all comes back around. Oh, and actually, I got distracted by this error, and then I didn't finish this line properly, so let's add an open and close bracket and a semicolon. And now this is looking better. Run, start debugging. Now, if I wanted to pretend that I was perfect, I could go back and redo this and edit it out, but honestly, you guys are probably going to run into similar problems where you're typing a little too fast, or you just slip up and something isn't perfect. So remember, you can do a run and a start debugging, and that can help you get to the bottom of a lot of problems that might be springing up. However, what we're about to do next, you will see a little bit of red, but I don't want you to worry about it because it should fix itself. I'll explain why as we go on. So we're keeping our update function. This is something that will be happening, as it says right here. It's called once per frame. That means it's going to check for these things every frame that the game is being played, which should be around 30 to 60 frames a second. So it's checking for this a lot. So here we're going to say if, and now it's time to tell this if statement what the if is, what the condition that we actually do something in this if statement is. So we are going to say vector3, and we've talked about vector3 before. I know it sounds kind of like a sci-fi term, but vector3 really just means that we're talking about the x, y, and z of an object, its position. So vector3 dot distance, and then inside of brackets, player dot position, comma, transform dot position, and then we're going outside of that first curly bracket, and we're adding less than or equal to move range. So what this is saying is, if the location of the player's position is less than or equal to the move range, then we're going to do something. The thing that we want to do is have the zombie start moving. Now, instead of actually putting that code right here, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to type attack mode, and then I'm going to do an open and close bracket and a semicolon, and I'm going to call this part right here done. Now you can see attack mode is popping up in red, so you might be assuming that I've misspelled something or made some kind of an error here. And technically there is something wrong, but it's just because I haven't gotten to creating this function yet. So in a little bit, we're going to go down here, we're going to create an attack mode function, and once that function exists, this will know where to go and what to do. So right now it's in red just because we haven't finished our script, so don't panic, don't try to fix it, we can move on from here. Oh, and I almost forgot, I need a pair of curly brackets to contain everything in my if function. So I do want to create a curly bracket above attack mode and below attack mode. You can see autocomplete likes to bump this curly bracket up here. That's fine, I'll leave it like that since that's what MonoDevelop wants to do. And I'm going to move on to my next statement, which I already have an if. I don't want to follow this up with another if. I want to follow this up with something that's similar, but a little different, is else if. So if we check for this, and this isn't happening, then we go down to the else if and we check for something else. Our else if will look much the same as our if, so I need to do an open and close curly bracket, and inside I will do another vector3 distance. And if you want to make this a little easier on yourself, you can come up here and you can copy everything inside of these brackets and put them inside of these ones. Now, it's not perfect, but the change that we need to make is pretty small, because down here in this else if is where I want to test whether or not we are within the attack range. We already tested if we were within the move range, and actually, if you're paying close attention, you'll notice that I just said something that's not exactly true. We wrote attack mode here, but we were checking for move range. The error here was checking for move range. We should have been checking for attack range first. So if we're not in attack range and we're not in attack mode, then we will come down here and check for move range. So make sure that your first one is checking for attack range and setting us into attack mode. And then in your else if, we're checking if we are in less than or equal to move range, and then create a new open curly bracket and a new closed curly bracket. And then we will check to see if we are in move mode. End that with an open and closed bracket and a semicolon, and now our else if statement is looking pretty good. Again, move mode is in red because we haven't created the function yet, so it's not sure where it's supposed to go or what it's supposed to do. But we'll get to that soon. Now, one last thing. If we've checked for attack mode, but we're not attacking, and if we've checked for move mode, but we're not in movement range, then we'll do one other thing. And this will simply be an else statement. Not an else if, just else. So else, and we don't need any conditions here. This is just saying if anything else in the world is happening other than these two things, if we're not in range to do either of these things, if anything else at all is happening, we will simply say, and this is our first line of code that's actually going to be talking to the NavMesh agent, we will put agent.is with a capital S for stopped, is stopped, and then equal to true. So this is a Boolean, this is a true-false statement, and this is saying that if we aren't in range to attack or to move, we will simply stand still. So now I'm going to go down outside of the update function, so past my second to last curly bracket, but before my very last curly bracket, because this is what contains all of the code. If I write anything past this curly bracket, it's going to break my script. So I'm going to come down here to my second to last curly bracket. I'll hit enter a few times just to give myself some space to work. And this is where I'm going to create my mode functions. So we have an attack mode and a move mode. So let's just create those real quick. We'll do void attack mode, open and close a bracket, and then create a curly bracket to contain this mode and another curly bracket to end it. And then real quick, let's just copy this mode and paste it down here. Now we don't want two attack modes, so we'll just change the second one to move mode. Inside of attack mode, we'll do something that we've already done. You could even copy and paste it. Our agent is stopped being equal to true. When we're attacking, we don't want the zombie to continue sort of sliding at the player while it's attacking. We want it to move up to the player, then stand still and do its kind of stumbling zombie swing attack. So it will come up, it will stand still, and next time, we'll get that attack animation in there. This is all that we need in attack mode for right now. With attack mode done, let's go on to the move mode. And if you want, you can start by just copying what we already have here in attack mode and pasting it inside of move mode, with one small change, being that we're going to change the agent is stopped to false instead of true. And now, just as important as turning the NavMesh agent back on is telling it to find the destination of the player. We'll do this by typing nav.setDestination with a capital S and D, and then inside of brackets, player.position. And as always, end that in a semicolon. And now our code should be good to go for now. It looks okay at a glance, so I'm going to go and file save. Then I'll jump back to Unity. I'm going to get up close to my zombie here. And on the zombie, we already have our NavMesh agent, but now let's connect our script. Mine is called zombie demo. So I will drag this over here until I see that blue line pop up, and I'll let go. If we were to test play right now, I guarantee even if you wrote your code perfectly, it would not work, or it would not appear to work, for a few reasons. One, we need to tell it which NavMesh agent to work with. It may seem simple enough because it's the same NavMesh agent that's on the character, but to really set this up, we're just going to take this zombie game object from the hierarchy, and we're going to drag it into this agent slot, and it's going to make sure that this script is communicating directly with this NavMesh agent. Now, it also needs to know what the range for moving is and what the range for attacking is. So how close does it need to be to the player for it to move towards the player? And how close does it need to be to the player to stop and attack? So let's make the move range greater than the attack range for sure. So if we are in, let's say, 5 units of the zombie, he'll start moving towards us. And then let's say he has to be within 1 unit of us to actually stop and then try to attack us. Now let's go test this out. All right, we have an error. Object reference not set to instance of an object. So this is the line where we are looking for the game object with tag player and transform. So let's take a closer look at our FPS controller. And I think I see the reason for the error here is the tag says untagged. Now I think usually this would be automatically tagged as player. But if yours came in untagged, or for some reason you may have changed the tag accidentally, so whether you're using a first-person controller or a third-person controller, let's go ahead and make sure that your player character has their tag set to player. Now let's go try this again. All right, we're in the game. And our zombie is following us. His speed might be a little bit fast for a zombie, but you can see if I get far enough away, he seems unaware of me and he's not moving towards me. If I get a little bit closer, he'll find me. And when he reaches me, he'll stop. And you'll see he kind of moves directly into my space, and that feels a little bit weird. I could set the range for him to stop a little further away, but I also think it's his walk speed that's a bit of a problem. So let's go to our zombie, and then we'll go to his NavMesh agent. And I'm trying to make this, not like a 28 Days Later zombie, but like an old George Romero zombie. So let's turn the speed down to like 1.5 instead of 3.5. And let's give that one more test. Okay, he's moving at me at a more reasonable zombie-like pace. You could probably even make it slower than this, depending on how you want your zombies to feel. Though he does still really seem to get right on top of me before going into attack mode. So let's set that attack range out to like 2 and see how that feels. Okay, that's better. Might be a little far. Maybe 1.5 is the answer. You can get very specific and precise with this. This is a float, which means it can be any decimal. You could set this to be like 1.297865. That kind of precision probably won't be helpful, but you can get incredibly precise with a variable like this. That feels pretty good. So our zombie will follow us and will stop when they're in attack range. And if we're too far away, well, they're a zombie and they might not have the greatest perception, so he hasn't noticed me unless I get close enough. And then he starts to move in for the kill. So this is the beginning of our zombie code. I think that's enough for now. Next time we'll work on our animations so that when our zombie is standing still, he'll not be completely still, but look like he's, alive or undeadish and sort of moving around a little bit. And when he starts moving towards us, he'll have a shambling, staggering zombie walk. And when he finally gets in range, he'll reach out and take a swing with a clumsy zombie attack. So I hope you're having fun starting to learn how to program AI for simple enemies like this. And by the end of our next lesson, hopefully he'll be looking a little bit more realistic, a little bit scarier, and just pretty good overall. So remember to take a screenshot of everything that you've accomplished today in Unity, share it in the comments section, and other than that, good luck and have fun.